The ball is on the turf. It is the summer of 2024, in Munich, Germany. The stadium is a sea of blue and red, the roar of the crowd so loud it feels like the ground is shaking. It is the semi-final of the European Championship. Spain, the sleeping giant, is trailing against France. The pressure is immense. A nation's hopes are on the line. This is where dynasties are born and where legends crumble. And on the field, looking like a kid waiting for a school bus, is a 16-year-old boy. He seems completely out of place. His name is Lamine Yamal, and he shouldn't be here. He's too young, too inexperienced for a game of this magnitude. History tells us this is a disaster waiting to happen. He receives the ball on the right wing, a full 25 yards from the goal. The noise of the crowd seems to fade. We see the French defender, a player twice his age, coming to close him down. In this moment, the story of football could have taken its predictable path. The kid would dribble into a dead end, or he'd panic and pass the ball sideways to safety. But he doesn't. He cuts inside, dancing past the defender as if he is standing still. He doesn't think, he just reacts. He unleashes a violent, curling shot with his left foot. The ball screams through the air, a blur of white, and crashes into the top corner of the net. The net ripples. The stadium explodes. A 16-year-old has just scored one of the most beautiful, courageous goals in European Championship history. He is supposed to be the future of Spanish football, but right here, right now, he is the present. He doesn't celebrate like a rock star, he just smiles, a kid's smile, and runs with his arms open wide as his teammates mob him. He has single-handedly turned the tide of the game, dragging his country back from the brink of defeat. The Spanish players, legends like Rodri and Alvaro Morata, look at him in disbelief. They aren't just looking at a teammate, they are looking at the impossible. They have just witnessed the birth of a global superstar. But what the cameras didn't show, what the commentators failed to understand, is that his journey to this moment was far more improbable than any victory on the pitch. This is a story of survival. A story of a boy from the rough streets of Rocafonda, a forgotten neighborhood, who had to be saved before he could ever be a hero. To understand how Lamine Yamal ended up here, silencing the world, we have to go back to the moment when a broken system almost lost him forever. This is a story about the incredible gamble that Barcelona took, and the one person who believed in him. Rocafonda is not a place you visit, it is a place you survive. It is a gritty, working-class suburb of Mataró, just north of Barcelona, where the shadows of the city's gleaming skyline do not reach. Here, the streets are narrow, the buildings are worn, and hope is a luxury most families cannot afford. This is where Lamine Yamal's story begins, but it almost ended before it even started. His father, Munir, is a Moroccan immigrant who came to Spain looking for a better life. He found hard labor and a system that didn't want him. His mother, Sheila, is from Equatorial Guinea, and she faced her own battles in a country that was often unkind to those who looked different. Lamine was born into a world that was against him from day one. He was a child of two worlds, belonging fully to neither, and in the rough neighborhoods of Rocafonda that made him a target. While other kids were learning to walk, Lamine was learning to survive. He was small, skinny, and shy. He would often come home with scraped knees and bruised elbows, not from playing football, but from being pushed around. His mother, Sheila, worked long hours cleaning houses to put food on the table. She would rush home, exhausted, to find her son sitting alone on the doorstep, waiting for her. He didn't have many friends. The other kids would play, but they wouldn't let him join. They saw him as the outsider, the quiet one. But he had a secret, a hidden weapon that no one in Rocafonda could see. While the other kids were stronger and faster, Lamine had a gift that was invisible to the naked eye. He had an unparalleled ability to control a football. It wasn't just skill, it was a spiritual connection. He would spend hours alone in the concrete courtyards, kicking a worn-out ball against the wall, over and over, until his feet bled. He was obsessed. The ball was his only friend, and the wall was his only opponent. His father, Munir, saw this. He saw the obsession in his son's eyes. He was a man who had come to Spain with nothing, who had worked jobs that broke his back, who had been told his entire life that he was not enough. He refused to let his son suffer the same fate. He took a gamble. He saw the desperation in Lamine's eyes, and he made a decision that would change everything. He decided to reach out to the unlikeliest of saviors, the very system that had failed him. He scrounged together a few euros to take the train to Barcelona. He walked into the gates of one of the most prestigious football clubs in the world, not with arrogance, but with a father's desperate plea. He walked in, holding the hand of a skinny, quiet boy who looked like he was about to be swallowed by the world. And he presented him to the scouts, begging them to just watch him play. The scouts were skeptical. They see hundreds of kids every week, all of them claiming to be the next big thing. They looked at Lamine Yamal, with his frail frame and shy eyes, and they saw nothing. They saw a boy who looked like he would be blown over by a strong wind. But Munir wouldn't take no for an answer. He begged, he pleaded, he told them he had no money, no resources, and no hope for his son's future. The only hope he had was the ball at his son's feet. It was a father's love against the cold, hard reality of the football industry. And it was a moment that would determine whether the world would ever know the name Lamine Yamal, or if his story would just be another footnote in the tragic chronicles of forgotten talent. The decision was made. Lamine Yamal, just 6 years old, was going to Barcelona. But getting him through the gates was only half the battle. Keeping him there, keeping him on the path, would require something far more radical. Because the system was not built for a boy like him. The scouts who watched him that day saw something they couldn't ignore. Former academy managers Jordi Rura and Aureli Altamira would later recall their first impressions. He was skinny, he was little, he walked funny. But every now and then, this kid with a strange look would do things that made you say, wow, this kid is different. They would sit and watch him play, predicting his next move, and he would always do something unexpected, something brilliant. But talent alone was not enough. By the time Yamal was 12, cracks were beginning to show. He was living with his mother in Granollers and spending weekends with his father in Rocafonda. The instability was taking a toll. He had lost habits related to studying, rest, and nutrition. He was drifting. This is the moment where most young talents disappear. The football machine chews them up and spits them out. But Barcelona, specifically La Masia, made a decision that defied every rule in their book. They decided to take him in. The problem? They didn't take children from Mataró at that age. They didn't take kids his age, period. They had to make a double exception. His agent at the time, Ivan de la Pea, pushed for it. Jordi Rura, the head coach, Xavi Villajoana, the director, and Xavi Martin, the director of La Masia, all agreed. If this child was really a bet for the club, it had to be done. They broke every rule to save him. And it wasn't just about football, it was about survival. La Masia became his home, his structure, his family. They gave him the stability his young life had never known. The street kid from Rocafonda, the one who had to fend for himself, the one who had always rebelled against a system that gave him nothing, was finally given a chance. And just 3 years later, at 15 years and 9 months old, he would walk onto the pitch at the Spotify Camp Nou and rewrite history. He would become the youngest player to ever debut for Barcelona, breaking a record that had stood for over a century. The name Lamine Yamal began to mean something different in the summer of 2024. The world didn't just see a talented kid, they saw the future of football, written in real time. One by one, the records fell, not like dominoes, but like monuments. He was no longer just chasing history, he was becoming it. Against Croatia, in Spain's opening game of the European Championship, he stepped onto the pitch at 16 years old and became the youngest player to ever debut in the competition's history. He didn't look nervous. He looked like he had been waiting his whole life for that moment. He provided an assist to Dani Carvajal, instantly making him the youngest assist provider in Euro history. The record books were already being rewritten. But it was against France in the semi-final where everything changed. The world was watching. The pressure was suffocating. And what did he do? He did what the greats do. He produced a moment of magic that will be replayed for generations. His curling strike from 25 meters was not just a goal, it was a statement. He became the youngest scorer in the history of the European Championship, a record previously held by a legend named Pelé. He was 16 years old. That goal didn't just send Spain to the final, it announced his arrival on the global stage. There was no turning back.